To have the courage to make the life transformation that you want without living by shoulds. That's a big thing for coaches, to listen to the should. But I should do this, I should do this. So how are your shoulds getting in the way of what you want?
Today, my guest is Marcia Reynolds. She's the fifth global president of the International Coaching Federation. She's constantly ranked as in the Global Guru's top 10. And she's the author of the international bestseller, Coach the Person, Not the Problem. Today, we're unpacking how she scaled from a corporate trainer to leading a coaching empire across 47 countries. Marcia, thank you for joining me today.
Well, thank you for asking me, David.
It's really exciting to talk with you. Most people don't grow up thinking, I want to become an executive coach. What were you thinking when you were 7 years old? What did you want to become?
Well, honestly, that's an interesting thing because exactly when I was 7, I won a poetry contest. And I always wanted to be a published author. That was my thing. And so when my publisher, my first book was self-published, and then I met my publisher and they published my second book, Wonder Woman, based on my dissertation. And when they told me that they were going to accept it, I cried. I said, "You just made a little girl's dream come true." So it
Wow.
was, yeah, and that's fortunate too, because that's what's one of the things that have helped me build my business, is that I
Mhm.
like to write and put it
Yeah.
out there. So yeah.
Yeah. I mean, definitely content, writing content has become a really big part of
Yeah,
every business, right? Um, s-
absolutely. So yeah,
so,
coaching came, many years later. And,
mhm,
the focus always was, I ran training departments in companies, and that I wanted to help people, uh, to make a difference with them, to help them to
yeah.
communicate with each other, to accept, their positions and do their best and all of that. So I always had that desire. And so
Yeah.
when I found coaching, the transition was fairly easy because it fit
Mhm.
my purpose. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I understand, you were doing corporate training before you started
Mhm.
coaching, correct?
Yeah. Mhm.
So how did you, because when you got into coaching, I think it was just
Mhm.
starting to become a thing, right? It was still early, like,
1995, right. In the 1900s.
so it was a
Yeah,
little bit like the Wild West, I guess, right? Where people were just
definitely.
kind of making up as they're going. So how did you
Mhm.
find out about coaching, and what was it that, well, you kind of mentioned a little bit of what
Mhm.
attracted you to that, but how did you find your way into coaching?
Yeah. Actually, it was the last day of my last job. Somebody sent me an email with this article in Our World, the famous Thomas Leonard article on Newsweek about this
Mm,
thing called coaching. Um, and I thought, this is interesting because, again, my choice of career has always been based on what is the result I want to create, not like, okay, I can do this and I can make money at it. It was more, I want to make a difference. And
mm,
some things happened early in my life that it made me recognize that people that were helping me overcome
mm,
difficulties, I wanted to do that for them. But I was always trying to do better at my coaching and or training, and you know, training inspires people to try, but that doesn't necessarily create sustainable change over time.
mm.
They love the classes, thank you, and then they go out, try it, and can't do it and go back to old behavior. So I was always looking at what creates sustainable change. I mean, even got a second master's in adult learning to try to figure this out. So I'm very committed to figuring this out. So when somebody sent me that article, I thought, well, something's different maybe about this. I don't know. But I watched a coaching demonstration and I said, I need to understand what just happened. There's something different there, that
Right.
creating that spark, that insight where they learn for themselves instead of me telling them what they should do. So I'm the type of person that says, this sounds good, I sign up. I don't think twice about it, It's just like it came to me. I guess it's important. So I did it. So I signed up for a coaching school in 1995. And it was long before we had the competencies and ICF. My coaching school actually started the ICF, and,
Oh,
Yeah, yeah, Coach U. There was only a couple of schools back then.
Hmm.
And so that's, one of the reasons I got involved with, the ICF from the very beginning, and so
I
moving
see.
into being the fifth president, right when we were bringing competencies out into the world and the craziness that that created. So absolutely it was the Wild West. But it was always based on I want to help people expand their thinking, to do
Hmm.
their best work, to be their best self. So
Yeah.
I was very purpose driven. And I
Hmm.
think it's one of the reasons, because of course I ran into the same thing as all coaches do. It's like, how do I
Hmm.
build this business? And can I
Yeah.
build this business? I can't come out of corporate, and the temptation to go back to corporate after, struggling the first few years. But I
Yeah.
kept thinking, but this makes a bigger difference even than
Hmm.
training. So I
Yeah.
just kept at it. Yeah.
Yeah. You know,
Mhm.
because of your position and how long you've been in the coaching industry, generally I
Mhm.
ask people what are the challenges that they had when they started, but I'd love to know from your viewpoint, what do you see as the biggest challenges that most of the coaches you interact with?
Mhm.
What do they face when they start their
Yeah.
coaching?
Well, there's two things. One, so many people get into coaching not recognizing that they have to build a business. They're drawn to, oh, coaching helps people. I want to help people. But then they think like, okay, but and when I get out, I'll find a consulting firm or a coaching company that will give me business. you know and if everybody's wanting that, supply and demand, that's not going to work. And particularly
Right.
if you don't have experience, you're not going to get business from others.
Yeah.
So the idea of that, I then am starting a business. And I was coaching someone yesterday in the insurance business, and he has contractors that work for him. And he says, our turnaround is huge because most of them come in not recognizing they have to go out and sell, you know?
Hmm.
And so we have a probationary period, and, and honestly, a sit down with them and like, is this really for you? And
Yeah.
and I said, we have the same problem in coaching. People don't recognize that they have to be salespeople,
Hmm.
and run a business, and do what you have to be visible, your business, to stand out in the crowd and all those things. They just think they, can hang up their shingle and people will come to them. If I build it, they will come. And that's just, it's not the way it is. But I have to say, I'm grateful that my family has been entrepreneurs for generations. They always like did their own things, started business. And so I grew up with that and recognizing what it would take. So I had a little bit more in my bones
Hmm.
that, okay, I got to go out and do this. My father started a business out of the trunk of his car that he built into a big distributorship. And I
Wow.
sold for him and when I was putting myself through college. So, it's that shift. It's an identity thing too. Well, I don't want to sell to people. Well, why not? If you have something important, you're not selling to them, you're offering them a gift. And coming out of corporate, it's like, well, I have a title and I'm this, and now you're a coach and you don't have a title, and people don't all come to you. You got to go to them. So there's an identity shift that must happen too, that from
Yeah.
corporate person with a title to coach who
Mm.
has a business. So it's not just the doing of it, it's the recognizing I have to make that shift. And that's, that's, to me, that's, where they're like, I don't really want to do that. And if you don't want to, you're not going to do it. But I think, again, coming back to what is the purpose? Did you get into this just to make money? Well, then that's not going to last. And coaches that do that don't last because they have to, as any personal business, it takes a number of years to build it.
Yeah.
I remember when I joined the National Speakers Association, they said it takes a good 5 years to build a speaking business. So are you in it for the long haul or not? And it's the same thing. It's going to take
Mm.
time to build the credibility, to build the visibility. that
Yeah.
people then will come to you. I mean, they come to me now, but it took a number of, decades to create that.
Yeah. I think that in the conversations I've had with previous guests and other
Mhm.
coaches, that's the common thread is that most people don't recognize what they're stepping
Mhm.
into is entrepreneurship, and that
Entrepreneurship.
they, especially I think for the people
Mhm.
who are coming from the corporate background, where you
Yeah.
have the corporate machine that's been there for years
Mhm.
or decades, right? There's
Mhm.
something to rely upon, but now you're most often a solopreneur. And so you're not just doing the
Yeah.
job of
Rely
coaching,
on
right?
yourself. Yeah.
Yeah, you're now the
Right.
marketer, you're the accounting, you're IT, you're
Yeah.
everything. So,
Right. And
um,
and and honestly, David, the idea that all I'm going to do is coach, I've never done that. It's like you have a it's not a coaching business. It's a personal development business. It's a leadership business, and you offer coaching, possibly training, even some consulting in terms of coaching cultures. Whatever else that you might do. That it's what you offer in service of the purpose of your business, not I sell coaching. And so again, a lot of coaches get very disappointed because they thought, oh, all I have to do is coaching. No, you're offering a service business, and
yeah,
what are you doing in service of your clients? What are you offering? For me, what was interesting was that I always thought I was going to offer training. I'm leaving my company, and I didn't get that article until my last day of my job, and I was going to have a training company. But coaching was so new. I had people that I had known from the corporate world that were in other companies. They're like, there's this coaching thing we're hearing about, and you have that on your website. So I started getting hired to teach leaders coaching skills. So I was still getting hired for training, but it was for coaching. And then people started hiring me for personal coaching, and the people that knew me through the business, and it was getting out there. So it was the that I also happened to come out at a time when it was just coming out in the world, that I was able to combine both the training and the coaching for my business.
I see.
Mhm.
So it kind of evolved from training to coaching.
Yeah. I still train. Yeah.
But I think it makes a lot of sense because and again, more of the conversations that I've been having, like, so
Hmm.
as a corporate trainer, you could lean on your expertise, your network as,
Hmm.
a trainer, but then
Yeah.
because right time, right moment,
Hmm.
you put coaching on your website, people start to see that and they're like, oh, this is interesting. And so that
Yeah.
kind of gave you an edge against, compared to your, let's say, competitors, right?
Absolutely. I was one of the first coaches to have a website. Yeah. I worked in tech for 11 years, so it's like, oh, website. Oh, I'm not afraid of technology, which was also a good thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's right.
Mhm.
95 would have been because the internet started coming out 93, 94, 95, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was
So
so
you
I
cutting
was an early
edge.
adapter. Actually,
Dang.
right, I got a lot of business because I was the only coach out there they could find on the internet.
Right.
So,
And I mean, and
mhm,
that's probably one of the hardest things these days is
mhm,
how do you become that coach? So for you, you were there at the very beginning. There's nobody else in this space online. And
mhm.
now there's, hundreds of thousands, tens,
Yeah,
hundreds of thousands of coaches now. Just
65,000 just in the ICF. It's still the same as that there has to be a way you stand out.
Mhm,
I can't tell you how many coaches came to me in the early years that came out of corporate like I did, and they're like, I don't want to do that corporate thing anymore, because it was toxic, and they don't. So what do they want to do? They want to coach people on their personal lives. I said, but you have expertise. Go back
mhm,
in and help it. That you have credibility that other coaches may not have with your years in corporate. Build on
mhm,
that. And then, once you build on it, you can shift the focus of your coaching in any way you want. But look at what you have from your experience, from your past to offer. That also excites you. Hmm.
I'm curious, have you seen, because so a pattern that I've seen is that there are some coaches who get into coaching who do really well, and then other coaches who kind of struggle. And this
Hmm.
pattern I've seen with the coaches who've struggled has been that they burned out of their corporate positions as like CMO or marketing or finance or whatever. And then they decided to either niche down into a different specialization or
Hmm.
into something like wellness coaching where their ideal client is like 20 something 30
Hmm.
somethings,
Hmm.
and so they struggle, and
Hmm.
the ones who see that start to realize, oh, I'm targeting the wrong people, but some
Hmm.
people don't realize it until too late. Is that
Hmm.
something that you see as well in from your years
Yeah.
of experience?
Yeah, yeah, it was kind of, what I was saying. They come to me and they want nothing to do with corporate because they burnt out, or, just hit the wall with the challenges they had to face. A lot of them were women that dealing with glass ceiling. That's what happened to me. They basically
Mm.
told me they weren't going to promote me anymore. There was no women above me. And you
Oh,
still have challenges. And I'm like, yeah, I do, not here. you know and they in fact, that was my doctoral dissertation on smart strong women in the workplace, and they only tolerate that for so long and then they go somewhere else, and then
right.
eventually start their own businesses. It's a common pattern. But then again, they want to throw out everything. I don't want to deal with those toxic environments when they have so much knowledge. So go help those toxic environments to be better.
Yeah.
you know what's interesting, I'm getting more requests finally now, with everything that's going on in the world, that they're saying, we got to align people better. We've got to help them communicate better, manage their teams better,
Yeah.
learn how to listen to each other. It's funny that they're saying now in 2026, our leaders have to learn how to listen. It's like you're just finding this out now.
Y-
So,
You know,
yeah.
I think though that right now we have
Mhm.
a harder time
Mhm.
listening to each other than we did in the past. And I think
Thank you.
part of the problem
Mhm.
is technology.
Mhm.
And even like there are benefits to remote work as well, but remote work also silos us between
Mhm.
um, connecting with people. And
Yeah.
so now the natural communication of talking with people working together
Mhm.
is scheduled meetings or chats online. And that level of connection and meeting or communication is different. And
Yeah.
I and even our attention span with social media and all these other things have shortened, right? And we get distracted by our phones. So I do feel like lear communicating now is actually harder
Mhm.
than it's ever been, even though we have all these tools to help us communicate.
Right. I can remember back in the 80s, we were looking at smart technology and how it was going to do a lot of our work for us so we could, be with people more instead of taking away our attention and doing email all day long. nobody nobody foresaw that, because I
Yeah.
was working with computer companies at the time, and the how much the technology has overtakes our
Mhm.
day, um, and keeps us away from being with people. That, yeah, it's a sad
Yeah.
thing, and yet as humans we require connection. We
Yeah.
desire, our soul desires to be seen, to be understood, to be heard, to feel I'm important. And and so people, they're not happy. I mean, they're stuck with their technology. They don't feel their lives have meaning, and and so they
Mm.
kind of spiral down, and and that affects productivity. Yeah. So
Yeah.
instead of like, okay, let's get together, let's get to know each other, let's just be with each other, which is so important, that a company should be a community, and
Mm.
instead of a machine. And so I think they're starting to recognize that we have to do that, because that, I've had more conversations with top leaders now saying, okay, I see that this infighting and and turnover and lack of connection, that it's really about bringing people together and aligning them around purpose and knowing each other, that they're finally saying this must be done. You can't just force people or scare them into doing that. You have to create the environment as well as the possibilities for people to come together.
Yeah. I feel like we're literally being experimented on with the technology that's coming out with AI, and even
Mm-hmm.
with AI now, there's some research that's saying like people are even though they have these tools that help them to be more productive, they're spending
Mm-hmm.
more time on their devices to do the work, or they're taking on work that
Yeah.
they would have traditionally handed off to somebody else to do because they have the AI to do it for them. And
Mm.
so I was listening, and they were saying like some people will like take their lunch to their computer so that they can run the AI tool to do whatever task. And
Yeah.
so there's definitely something going on right now, like as we're learning to use all these
Mm-hmm.
tools and technology,
Mm-hmm.
how do we use it well for our own well-being, right?
But David, as you were saying that, I was thinking, but isn't that a great plug for coaching? That at least for an hour in someone's day, that they can sit with a human and talk about the challenges they're facing, and just
Yeah.
kind of work through that instead of relying on something else to do it for them, which isn't going to give them the best solution necessarily, because
Right.
it doesn't, yeah, go beneath the surface to
Yeah.
in the tech world, they have the concept of root cause analysis. If you
Mhm.
solve the surface problem, it's just going to come back another way. It's like whack-a-mole, you know.
Right.
But in coaching, we do a root cause analysis of what's really going on and help people to discover on their own, oh, right, this is really the issue, and
Yeah.
whereas AI doesn't do that, it just solves the surface problem. So for an hour, a couple times a month, that we can
Yeah.
talk with a human and sort this through, that it's actually given us more possibilities of work, that we can sort through problems in a different way than technology,
Yeah.
and that could be the tagline, for a coach.
Yeah, I think that is such a great point, right? Where if you interact more with technology than with real people, having a
Mhm.
coach, somebody that you can actually have a real conversation with and connect
Yeah.
with, a genuinely have a real connection with, right? I think the next several years will be very interesting for the coaching space, just on that fact, right? Because as the world is changing and evolving so rapidly, more leaders are asking, what do we do now? And
Yeah. Mhm.
what do we do with our teams? How do we adjust to
Yeah.
this changing landscape? I think this is a time for coaches to really kind of, show
Yeah.
up and really,
Right.
show what they can do.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, yeah, it's creating the opportunities.
in your experience, because I'd love to hear, every coach I've talked to, right? They've worked with a few people, depending on how long they've coached,
Mhm.
where you went in to work on a business, some kind of business issue, right? But then you end up changing their lives, and I'm wondering, do you have any stories you'd like to share
Mhm.
about the impact that you've created in some of the people you've worked with?
Yeah. First, let me just say that um, most coaching, it is not like this huge shift of life changing, but the amazing shift, even in just recognizing that I have a meeting coming up and I'm creating this to be the worst case scenario, and you know, maybe it's going to be great, and just realize that I have what it takes to make this meeting great. Just even those shifts, are so powerful. But, one of my first, actually, my first stranger client that didn't come from a friend referring somebody. It came from, I was featured in an article, and he called me. And this is where credibility comes in. They want to know you know something about their life. So it's good to use whatever experience you've had to say, I understand this. He said to me, I'm an attorney. Have you ever coached an attorney? Well, of course I hadn't. I hadn't even been coaching that many people. But I said, well, I haven't coached an attorney, but I was married to one. And he said, good enough. So, which is like, okay, so you understand me. That's all he needed to know, that I understood the way he thinks. Well, the interesting thing was he had built a huge law firm, and he was hating it, and he felt trapped by it. And he was remembering his days of being a prosecutor for the state, and the community he had, and yeah, it was tough work, but he was making an immediate difference instead of running a business. And through our time together, and this has happened a number of times, of having the courage to really do what I want to do. He ended up selling his firm and going back to work for the state, because that's what he really wanted to do. Or the time I coached the guy who he was going to sell his business and just, work with charities, be a philanthropist. And in our time together, he realized he didn't really want to sell his business. It was his family. And so to have the courage to make the life transformation that you want without living by shoulds, that's a big thing for coaches, to listen to the should. But I should do this. I should do this. So how are your shoulds getting in the way of what you want? And so just helping them recognize, I can do what I want. I don't have to do what society says I should be doing, or what my family says, or anybody else. That no matter what it looks like, it's what I want.
Mm.
But there's been a number of those things, and so much of coaching is just recognizing, pulling their thinking out of their head and putting it on the table, and
Mm.
so I like to use reflection even more than just questions. So you're telling
Yeah.
me that you're going to continue to run this firm, that you hate running this firm, just because
Yeah.
you built the firm and it would look weird to go back to being a prosecutor. And just sharing that, it's like, oh yeah, I am doing that. It's so amazing because they can't do it themselves. Their brain stops them, from
Mm.
truly analyzing self, but putting it out here so they can see it. And they're like, oh, right. That creates yeah, I'm doing that. And that's not what I want to do. And so most coaches make coaching way too hard. I have to come up with the best question or whatever. But it's, again, providing that moment in the day where people can freely talk and not feel they'll be judged. So having an external coach is a good thing, that I can talk through this cycling I'm doing in my brain, just put it out there and really look at it, and be okay with whatever it is I come up with. That it may be the only time in their day they can truly be themselves. And what a gift we give people just with that. Wherever you are on the coaching path, a lot of hesitation of coaches to build a business is also, I'm not ready to do that. I'm just learning my skills, and I have to be ready. Well, what is that? When we started, it was like we didn't know what we were doing. We were just creating a safe space for people to talk, and how much they value that. They
Yeah.
value that safe place in a moment in their day to talk it through, to sort it out with someone
Mm.
who's not going to judge or has any agenda. And so remembering, what are you giving people, that's of value to them? And it's, again, the safe space. I don't even have to call it coaching. I call it that, but here's my benefit to you. And again, it comes back to sales. What are the benefits?
Yeah.
you know, that you're giving people? What's your unique selling proposition and what's your benefits? Okay, define that. Define that, and that will help you put it out there.
I love that. I'm just thinking, okay, because you've published 5 books. Your sixth book is coming out, and I'd love to just talk a little bit about your newest book that's coming out, and what's the value proposition of that one. Um,
Yeah.
So can you just explain a little bit about this next one coming
Yeah.
out? You didn't become a coach to be a marketer. But if you want to build a sustainable business, you need a system that works for you while you're coaching. Coach Ops is designed to help you go from unpredictable referrals to a reliable marketing system without it feeling pushy or salesy. If you're ready to build something systematic, visit kyber5.com/coach ops.
Yeah. So if you notice, because it's right behind me, I really was specific about the cover. I wanted it, I said, I need to represent an energy flow. Okay. Because that's what coaches need to understand now. So what's different is AI showed up, because I wrote the first version of Coach the Person, Not the Problem, now 6 years ago. And the introduction to the book is brand new because I really want to address what is our unique selling proposition in relationship to AI. Now, what's interesting about AI is that it will take over for beginning coaching, just, more formulaic competency. I'm meeting the competency, I'm thinking. And so coaches have to go beyond that if they want to stay in this field and make a difference, that they really have to learn the competencies and let them go. And so understanding even the intention of the competencies, not just the action. So coaching isn't just a performance, but it is a true flowing conversation that I know what it is I'm doing without thinking about it. So I defined what do we provide in the human connection energetically with our emotions? How do my emotions impact you? How can my emotions open up your brain to new possibilities? That energetic exchange is even more critical. So I addressed that in the introduction, and then I moved all the competencies around connection and, building that safety, that trust, that willingness to be coached. I moved that to the forefront. And then how do you use your skills with your presence to
Yeah.
make a difference for your clients? So it's reorganized. And I went through every page because it's like, well, I would say it differently now. I would say it differently now. So, really addressing coaching in the world today and what we're going to have to face, going forward, and the importance of the
Mm.
energetic connection, even more so than what we say. Which
Yeah.
comes back to, what I said, how I learned coaching at the very beginning. I just created a safe space, asked a
Yeah.
few questions here and there, and they loved it. They
Yeah.
loved it. So again, coaches make coaching too hard. But what we're doing for humans is, especially now, like you said, they're so entrenched in their technology that pull up your head, let's talk, let's connect, let me help you go deeper, so you can discover not just solutions to a problem, but even how to become who you want to be, and to move into that space, that becoming, the better entrepreneur,
Yeah.
that I'm going to help you get there.
I think I mean, this is something really needed for the moment, right? Like, there's all these things happening and shifting, and I
Mhm.
think it sounds like it's kind of coming back to the fundamentals of, being a person, having
Mm.
relationships and connecting with
Yeah,
others,
yeah.
and learning to re-engage with each other.
It's so important. We are social animals. Let's
Yeah.
not forget that we're a mammal. you know, and that community, that we survive by community, that the worst punishment is isolation.
Mm,
And that when we're just in technology on our own, we're numbing ourselves to life. And so
mm,
we don't even recognize when we're not happy, we're not fulfilled because we're numb. And
mm.
so bringing back people to be alive in this world, is also one of the great gifts. Come out of that, come back here, feel, not just feel the
Right.
joy, but feel the pain, because that's life. And that's how
Mm,
we evolve, and that's how we grow. And underneath that numbness, there's a part of you that wants that
yeah.
because of who we are.
I love that philosophy because we are definitely seeing this time right now again because of technology, where people are creating. There's the parasocial phenomenon where people build these relationships with these influencers online through
Mhm,
YouTube or social media,
mhm,
and now we have the rise of like these AI influencers. So there's nothing really intrinsically different from seeing one influencer who's real or AI, you know,
mhm,
and building a
mhm,
relationship with that. And
mhm,
so there's all these stories that have been coming out over the last few years, especially of
mhm,
like children connecting with AI tools and just like,
mhm, mhm,
just listening to it to an extent that doesn't even really make sense, right?
mhm,
So I do feel like what your book is kind of addressing is really needed, right? It's talking about
mhm,
because it sounds like it's talking about genuine human connection and how to
mhm,
build at that. And as coaches, like
mhm,
AI tools cannot at the moment cannot build a human connection, right?
mhm.
And so
It's
I
still
think that
our
is probably yeah.
let's
So
remember what it stands for. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
So I think for the
It's
the
never
coach,
going to be able to, because again, the human connection is not just by words, it's by an energetic connection that we
mm,
create or we break.
mm,
Just with being with that I am here for you, I am with you, and that you
yeah,
feel that deeply, is different than what a machine can give us. But it's interesting, David, you say that now, and I have a lot more years of experience, you know, with how many years I've been on this planet. But, when I was saying back in the 80s, when we were just making the shift to smart technology, people afraid of computers, these things that PCs, I mean, they were terrified, of what that was going to do. And, or that they had the idea that it was going to do our work for us. Well, that didn't happen. It just
mm,
created more work. And, and the internet. And then there was the internet. And then there was, all the phones, and phones are taking over our life. So,
mm,
it's just that the acceleration of technological advances has increased. It's
yeah,
always been there, but it's increased and it's far faster than human evolution. So it's
mm,
scary,
yeah,
So I mean, it's there, but again, that recognizing, for me, even I get to travel, and so I see people out in the world. But when I'm home, I'm just sitting here, and I force myself to get out into social, environments because it's like get out there, or you're going to end up like just wanting to stay in the house,
yeah,
'cause it's more comfortable. But we rely on that. And again, I said that human evolution is not as fast as technological advances, but that part of that is because we're not out there being with each other enough. And the more we resist that and rely on technology, then we slow down our human evolution. And so we have to keep being with each other and listening to each other and honoring each other in order for
yeah.
us to truly evolve as humans.
Yeah, no, and I love that. I totally agree, and but I also think that the natural state of most people is to be comfortable,
It
to
definitely,
if you can be
yeah.
lazy, let's be lazy. To challenge ourselves, to push ourselves to grow is harder, but I think that is really, I think that's where we need to train ourselves and our the next
Mhm.
generation
Yeah.
to challenge ourselves to
Mhm.
push ourselves to grow and develop. I wanted to ask a question
Mhm.
because you've been able to grow your business from doing one-to-one coaching. You've been doing
Mhm.
speaking engagements. I
Mhm.
think you kind of have been able to really kind of grow and scale your business. What were kind of the steps that you took to be able to get to where you are today?
Yeah. Well, one of the things that I'm so glad that my past self decided that not only did that my last day in corporate that I signed up for a coaching school, but I also signed up to join the National Speakers Association. And I worked with improv acting coaches for a number of years to develop my speaking and to be authentic on the stage and to really, so a lot of my having the courage to be open and to be with you and to care about you, I learned from speaking, and
Mm.
they were so good. Their conferences were totally focused on marketing a service business. So I learned a
Sure.
lot about marketing that way. And so I'm no longer a member, but I was for 20 years. I'm a certified speaking professional, you know. So and I had a desire to speak. So I looked at that was going to offer coaching, training, speaking, and so I had a service business, not just a coaching business. And when based on economy and things like that, when people didn't have money for coaching, then I rely more on training. The different I diversified in what I offered from the very beginning. And so,
I see.
that was a critical piece, and that I like to write. And we didn't have podcasting back then. We had blogging. So I started a blog right away, and started to develop a database on my website, being one of the first coaches. An awful website, but it was, whatever we were doing to create a website and promoted it as much as possible through whatever social media we had back then. I don't even remember.
Yeah.
But yeah, but to put it out there so writing because I like to write. But now, if you don't like to write, then have a podcast, do something else, that you're more comfortable
Yeah.
doing. So, but I think that was the main thing. And then recognizing what I wanted to be known for. And so for years it was leadership because that's the world I came out of. And
Hmm.
so I could say that I had some experience. Plus I have a lot of credentials, and a lot of, especially in Asia, they credentials. Oh, she has a doctorate. Oh, she's an
Yeah.
MCC. It's so important,
Yeah.
to have that, because that helps filter that they give you the credibility above some other people. So I started writing right away. And actually, my first book, David, I was one of the first to teach emotional intelligence because my second master's is in instructional design. So I can design training. And I read the book and said, this is needed. Put it on my website. And
Yeah.
I got business, and I got to be known as the brain lady in emotional intelligence. And I recorded one of my workshops in like 1998 and had it transcribed, and I worked with that as my first book. So, I didn't sit down to write it. I transcribed a workshop, and Outsmart Your Brain was my first book, and it's in a second, third edition now. Yeah, so I knew from speaking you have to have a book. you know, uh, Now it can be different. I have to have a podcast. And that get yourself out there. I marked it by visibility,
Mm.
more so than sending emails and that. I just made myself very visible as much as possible with an expertise. Now, over the years, my expertise has shifted to I've let go of a lot of leadership and I focus on coaching. I'm a coach's coach. I speak at coaching conferences. I write for coaches, but I also teach coaching skills to leaders. I don't teach other leadership, but I will teach coaching skills and help companies create coaching cultures. So I'm still doing corporate work, but it's all based around coaching. So I let go of, actually the market told me, that the coaches want this. So when I finally let it go, that I am a leadership, I focus leadership. It's no, I focus on coaching, and I work with leaders, but the
Mm.
focus is coaching. So define your focus, is really important. What is it that who do you want to coach,
Yeah.
and want to, and what's the difference you want to make? Your
Mm.
ideal client and the difference your purpose. Define that, and
Yeah.
that's always helped me to get through the difficult years and building the business up front. Yeah, and that I helped to create was a part of the ICF in early years, was just a thank you. I got into it at the right time. So
Yeah.
yeah. Hmm.
Before we close, I like to end with two questions. So the first one is, what have you learned about yourself through this process of, becoming a coach and starting your own business?
Yeah. You know what I love about coaching is I'm constantly learning about myself. That the more I know me, the more I can be with others. I think the most difficult thing was for me to acknowledge that I am a global guru. I am a guru. People listen to me. It's like, oh no, I'm just doing my thing and helping people. But the more I take on that I am seen as an expert, the more I can help other people, even though it feels uncomfortable to say I'm a guru, but to claim who I am and what I do and how other people see me. And it's okay, because the
Yeah.
more I claim that, the more good I can do. So
Mm.
I think that, coming into myself, and so many coaches that, I'm not good enough. I don't have something of value to give. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Yes, you do. Claim that so you can
Mm.
put yourself out there more comfortably in the world.
Yeah. No, I love that. I think that's definitely something that everybody needs to hear, not just coaches. I feel like you've already answered the last question, but the last question is like, what's one piece of advice that you'd give somebody who's just beginning in their coaching journey?
Create a coaching community or belong to one. I have to say that, your coaching school, you have a community, you support each other in this. ICF, I went to every conference for years until one year I skipped for my dissertation. It's I love my coaching community. I'm grateful for my coaching community that we've supported each other and helped each other through those difficult times. And again, this is the human connection we all need,
Mm.
instead of trying to sit out here and figure it out on our own. So in addition to knowing your purpose and stick with your purpose and understanding how you serve your purpose, have your community of support out there. And I think every profession, we should have a community of support.
Marcia, thank you so much for your time today. I really appreciate it. I'm excited to get a copy of your book and to read it.
Thank you.
And if anybody wants to get connected with you, what's the best way to do that?
Well, my website is there's two ways of finding it, but outsmartyourbrain.com is the easiest one to remember and spell. So outsmartyourbrain.com. I'm on LinkedIn these days with promoting the book every day, and in some of the other sites as well. So you can find me in so many different ways. Yeah.
Okay. So
Mhm.
I'll make sure to keep a link to all of that, all of your
Mhm.
social and your website and the show descriptions. And if they want to get a copy of your book, just Amazon or
Well, whatever online bookstore they use, Amazon, of course, is out there worldwide. And even on my website, if you look under books and you click on Coach the Person Second Edition, it gives links to the sites. It also gives a description of the book, what's in it, what's different, and a button that if you buy the book, you get a bonus that leads you to a page that says, when did you buy the book? Where did you buy it? Then you click submit and it gives you a toolkit that is highlights of every chapter. So you can use it as a workbook as well. So, give you that link as well to go on the book page. So,
okay, fantastic.
yeah. Okay.
All right. Marcia, thank you so much for your time today. I wish you the best of luck with your book. And to
Yeah,
everybody
great.
else, we'll see you guys next time.
Okay. Thank you, David.
Want to stop guessing and start building a marketing system that actually fills your calendar? Head to kyber5.com/coachops and let's get systematic. That's it for today's episode. I hope you grabbed something useful you can actually apply in your business. If you did, leave a comment or share it with a friend. And hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you next week.